All right, welcome back. We're living a switched on life, and today's a special episode because, as we know, Eric, in the business you were in, the special agent business, living a switched on life is pretty important. Today, we're going to talk about sort of America being switched on, right, with a special guest.
The need for America to be switched on every day. Today's guest, Victor Avila, is really going to share his true life story. Victor, it's a privilege and an honor to have a true American hero with us today.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, John, for having me today.
Murder, violence is skyrocketing here in America, and so much of it stems from a country that sits right close by on our southern border. And you have firsthand experience with the Mexican cartel and the drugs and the human trafficking that goes on via that border. So what I want to do today is educate the American population here to the threat, the real threat, and why America needs to be switched on to the threat at our southern border.
Absolutely, Eric, and you're spot on. And it's exactly what it is. It's a threat, and it's an imminent threat that we face with our southern border and our relationship with Mexico. It goes, you've heard about immigration reform and everything else that we've dealt with, the wall and other issues on the southern border. But what it comes down to it, after you discuss all those issues, it comes down to national security and the safety and security of our U.S. citizens. And one of the ways that we tackle that and to protect our citizens is to secure that southern border.
And Victor, you learned firsthand the devastation and how these cartels operate. Can you share with our viewers, if you will, your story that you talk about in your book, Agent Under Fire?
Absolutely. And you talk about being a switched on moment in my life. I was stationed and assigned to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City in 2000. I started in 2008 in Ciudad Juarez at the U.S. consulate there when that city was the most dangerous city in the world. They were committing about 350 homicides a month. And my temporary duty assignment there led to a permanent assignment to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. And it was the busiest ICE, Homeland Security Investigations office in the world at the time that I was there. As you can imagine, we were overwhelmed with the amount of work, and you name it, human trafficking, arms trafficking, money laundering, drug trafficking, commercial fraud, you name it. We dealt with all of it there. And yes, in 2011, I was sent on an assignment with Special Agent Jaime Zapata, February 15, 2011, which will be 10 years in a couple of months. The anniversary is coming up. And we were sent out on this highway to go meet with our counterparts from the Monterey office, our ICE agents, to exchange and pick up some equipment from them.
Yep.
This was a botched assignment, and it wasn't anything that we were, accustomed to normally in Mexico, as far as having, escorts and other type of security. Nevertheless, we were sent out on our own, and on our way back, traveling back from the area of San Luis Potosí back to Mexico City, we were ambushed by about 10 individuals of the Zetas cartel off of Highway 57 and basically forced us off the road, ambushed us.
This is Victor Avila from ICE. We got shot. We are on the highway.
And I got shot 3 times, and Special Agent Jaime Zapata tragically lost his life in the line of duty. And so part of my duty now is to inform people that, in fact, something of this caliber has happened to a U.S. agent over outside of the country. A lot of people still don't know 10 years later that this has happened. And so this is the reason why I wrote the book. The number one reason why I wrote the book is to bring awareness of what these cartels are capable of. They no longer we know that they'll kill women and children. They hang bodies from bridges. They decapitate bodies. They do crazy stuff, sometimes worse than ISIS. And I compare them to ISIS. I compare them to the Taliban. I compare them to
Absolutely.
terrorist organizations because that's exactly what they are. And they didn't care that day, and they crossed the line on February 15, 2011, and took a U.S. agent's life.
Do you, to this day, do you know how they received that intelligence regarding your path of travel?
No, it's a great question. We've been trying to get answers for the past 10 years through our government, through any means possible, and it's just been a derailment of information and, frankly, no cooperation. They knew that we were on that highway, and they knew that we were Americans, by the way, because I told them when we had our hands up inside the cabin of that armored Suburban. I shouted at them in Spanish that we were Americans, that we were U.S. diplomats, that the vehicle was a diplomatic vehicle, that we were from the U.S. Embassy, and they knew. They actually testified to this in the trial in 2017 in D.C. These individuals were caught and were extradited and tried in the U.S. And I couldn't believe that I had a scumbag, and these scumbags had actually corroborated my story that I said. In fact, they did hear me say that we were Americans, and they still decided to open fire.
Well, my heart goes out to you and your family, and I want to thank you personally for your service, and I know John as well. Without you and people like you, this country would fail to exist. I want the American people to understand, again, the real threat the Mexican cartels posed to this country, and the fact that the Mexican government continues to work closely with the cartels to this day.
And unfortunately, although better secure now than in other years, our southern border is still not 100% secure. And we're seeing record numbers of seizures of methamphetamine, of fentanyl, of heroin coming through. And in my career, when I started seeing record numbers of seizures, all it is to me is an indication of the amount of drugs that are actually coming in, and what we call the gotaways of human beings, the human smuggling, the human trafficking, and all the drugs that are making it to our communities.
Right.
This southern border is not secure. The cartels are a reason that the United States should be paying a very, very close attention to what's happening in Mexico, because although the cartels might be headquartered in Mexico, they are viable and present in our country and in 40 countries around the world.
Does crime stop at the border?
Absolutely does not stop. As a matter of fact, a lot of the crime that we've been seeing and spike in crime in our country and around our communities is directly related to the cartels. Remember, this is the product that they bring in, and they see it through to get to the hands of our children in these communities. And we've seen communities in New Jersey and other towns around our country that have spiked in violent crimes and thefts and rapes and you name it. A lot of it is from the cartel members and illegal aliens that come in here, criminal illegal aliens, to come in our country to commit harm and commit crimes. So it all comes down to that border and really attacking what I think is the cartels that have really become a foreign terrorist organizations, is which I started referring to them many years ago. They're no longer just drug cartels anymore. These guys are involved in all illicit activities that have a nexus with our border.
That's right. They're narco terrorists. We have to understand the threat is real to all Americans. We have to understand, in my eyes, that Mexico is a failed state. It's been a failed state for 30 plus years. Until we take the threat seriously, we will continue to see crime in America skyrocketing.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no ignoring the statistics are there. Mexico is in. We're almost at the end of the year here, and they're going to surpass their murder rate from last year. That was over 35,000 homicides. And that think about that, of a country of 110 million people per capita, how many murders that is. If we had that type of a murder rate in the United States, there would be chaos. And
Yes.
these are numbers that are beyond Iraq, beyond Afghanistan. This is I've been telling it for many years. This is our Iraq. This is our Afghanistan that is actually right next door to us, not 6,000 miles away.
Victor, I'd like to ask, is Mexico a safe place to travel to? We talk a lot about being switched on as we travel to parts of the world, and we wonder if Mexico is a safe place to travel and vacation, or are folks under sort of a false sense of security?
I get this question a lot, and right now there are certain places you could go to Mexico and be fine. One of the places I would mention is go to Cabo San Lucas. It'll be okay. Cancun is a very hot spot, and these hot spots shift throughout the year, and
Yep.
so you have to be switched on and do your due diligence to see where you're gonna go. And I tell people, if you're gonna go, you go straight from an airport in the U.S. to the airport in that resort area, and don't leave the resort. And I'll give you an example. Even some areas like in Puerto Vallarta or Nueva Vallarta, I had a friend of mine vacation there, and was fine. And while he was there, there was a big firefight in the middle of the day
Wow.
outside of his resort between cartel members and the police. And everybody in the resort had to hunker down. Thankfully, they were all safe. But this is what I tell people all the time, is that you never know when these guys have no regard for life whatsoever. They don't care that you're a tourist. They're there to do their business. And if you get caught in one of these firefights, that could be the end of your life. And that risk is definitely a high risk to take. But having said that, there are still some areas in Mexico you could go. Mexico is a beautiful country, and it's also a shame that the cartels have ruined that beautiful country for the rest of the world to see. All these issues that we see, and detentions and catch and release, and the immigration, sanctuary cities. I name all this in my book. All these issues that comes all down to what's happening in Mexico.
Yes, yes. I mean, you mentioned your book again, Agent Under Fire. I want to congratulate you. Is there a story in the book that you want to share with us about being switched on in your life, and how being switched on helped you during the course of your life?
Yeah, there's one, as a young kid. I was a very skinny, underdeveloped young child. My parents were very concerned about why I wouldn't grow, and why I wouldn't gain any weight. And they would feed me goat's milk, and they try to do all the supplements. And the doctors kept on telling my parents he's fine. But it wasn't until the switched on moment for me is when my dad, at the age of 11, took me to the local rec center, and I joined a karate class. And that karate class, talk about get switched on. It did not only did it do physically changes for my body, and I grew, but I gained and learned the art of Shotokan. Became a certified black belt by the age of 16, and talk about an incredible discipline. And so that has helped me in many aspects of my life, with discipline, with my work ethic, something that I gained from my parents, and was enhanced by my discipline of the martial arts. And so that was a big switched on moment for my life, that shaped my career going into college. It's a great moment for me, but I'll follow that up with a dark moment, because after the shooting, and this goes on to what you mentioned at the top of the show, is the officer wellness, and what we are facing with in our country, with police officer suicides and PTSD. And I've seen that dark side. After I went through the shooting, I gained a tremendous amount of weight. I couldn't sleep. I had night terrors. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and my life was turned upside down. And something that I share a lot in the book, that a lot of people have given me feedback about it, that I actually didn't realize it when I wrote it, is how much my family is mentioned in the book. And obviously it's on purpose because without my family, my wife, my kids, and my extended family, my parents and siblings, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I'm very fortunate not to have picked up drugs or alcohol. I've never had that issue, but I did have issues with my sleep. I did have issues with weight gain. I had a lot of issues with mobility and pain that to this day I still have certain injections on my hip to keep myself mobile. But that switched on moment came about a year afterwards, and kind of realized, okay, I have to tackle this, and I did seek the help. I did get the counseling, and I talk a lot about that, a little bit in the book, but a lot when I do public speaking events, because I want first responders, military, and police to understand that this is nothing to be ashamed of. This is something that our jobs, especially if you go through a traumatic event through your employment, that this is something that you could deal with and overcome.
Absolutely. We're human beings, Victor, you and I, and all the men of women of law enforcement, and we're asked to perform a superhero job, and perfectly and without any mistakes. And you and I and all Leos, after working during a course of a day or a career, we see things that most human beings shouldn't see. In fact, all human beings shouldn't see. And the effects it has, not just on our minds, but on our bodies, is devastating to some. And you're right that the number one cause of death to Leos in America, sadly, is suicide.
How are you guys down there now? You're retired. What's the climate? I'm sure you're in touch with agents who are still on the job. What's the climate like in Mexico now, and what should we be concerned about in your view?
Let me tell you right now, I have friends stationed there in Mexico and Central America right now, and they are very concerned with the direction that Mexico has taken, and the relationship, and the word that they use is a strain that it's put on the relationship between the U.S. and Mexico. They're on the ground and trying to work and try to get something done, but it's very difficult when policies and laws are passed by both governments that puts a wall, if you will, from that relationship. And right now, they are at the biggest concern, and I am at the biggest concern for their safety, because Mexico now has basically taken away some of those protections and immunity protections that would come with being accredited, like when I was there. So, for example, when I was shot in the line of duty, one of the charges against these Zeta cartels was the attempted murder of an internationally protected person. That meant that I had a certain immunity protection. You wouldn't be able to charge that right now because they don't have those protections in place anymore. And keep in mind, Mexico has very different laws. When I was there and I was taken out of the country at 3 a.m, because when it comes down to it, I'm not a citizen of Mexico, I'm an American, and they didn't want to have to deal with other secondary issues with their law that came up. They said, we got to get Victor out of there and his family, and they did. And so now all of those issues have become even more strained and more complicated as we speak.
Yeah, so there's no protection now for agents working in Mexico right now, and in fact, sources and methods have to be shared. Isn't that true?
And so now this is the new law that Mexico passed. They want every single contact that is made with one of their government officials to be reported to the equivalent of their State Department, which is unheard of.
In your view, what was the reason for that, for the passage of that law?
They were embarrassed, I think, of the arrest of the highest level, the general of the government of Mexico, the highest that had ever been arrested for corruption charges and drug trafficking charges and money laundering charges. And I think, frankly, the Mexican government was embarrassed because the DEA had conducted this great investigation, by the way, to be able to get this guy, and Mexico did not cooperate in that, and rightly so, because the U.S. did not allow them. And it's not a good idea.
Not a good idea at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, I
It
agree.
doesn't look like it's getting any better, right?
Absolutely not anytime soon.
You know, I thank you for your service, sir. Please go to Agent Under Fire.
That's a great read. The book is Agent Under Fire. It's a great read. It's available
On Amazon.
Again, Victor, tell us where we can get it.
Yeah, you can go to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and you go to my website, AgentUnderFireBook.com.
Well, riveting and informative. I thank you for all that you've done over these last few years and getting the word out about the importance of America being switched on to the drug war that continues here in America. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Thanks, John.
America in crisis. Defunding police. Murder rates rise. Overdoses and suicides skyrocket. Police are leaving the job. You, more than ever, need to be alert. Be ready. Be able. Be switched on. Switched On Life is a helpful guide for preparing you to be alert to danger, both in your physical and spiritual life.
Identify, avoid, escape, live for another day.
Using Eric Caron's simple, switched-on philosophy about awareness gained as a highly trained special agent can change your life. In the blink of an eye,
You want cover.
in a moment of potential crisis, and over the course of one's life. Switched On Life will help you make the right decision.
So if you train the mind, the body will follow. If you don't train the mind, potentially you could die.
Switched On Life leads to greater personal and spiritual fulfillment.
Strengthen the soul through faith. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to need that faith.
No matter where you play or pray, stay switched on.
Be safe. Stay switched on.
The Switched On Life podcast can be found at switchedonlife.com or where all fine podcasts are heard.